Good morning, everybody. And welcome to the launch of our report, Matrics on the Fringe. We're trying to get going exactly on time today, and we'll leave a little bit in the room. So welcome. We have a really exciting lineup and a jam-packed lineup. So we're going to kick off. So we obviously don't have time to go around the room. Love you the comments in the chat. So please use the chat feature to tell us your name and which organization you represent, if any, which institute you're part of. We'd really love to know who joined us in the room today. So the overview for the event today, we finish promptly at 12:15 and respect everyone's time. And the order of events is we'll do a little welcome now, and I'll introduce the panelists, and then I'll hand over to Martin Gustafsson, who did the research for us. And he'll give us a short presentation on some of how he went about it and some of the findings. And then I will hand over to the other panelists for some responses, and then we'll have an open discussion. I realize I haven't introduced myself. So I am Kristal Dunan-Williams, and I am project lead at Youth Capital. And we commissioned this research with RESEP at the University of Stellenbosch. And we're very excited to present today. We're giving a few minutes for people to enter. I see that going, so people are introducing themselves. We're streaming this event live. Anybody hasn't managed to join us on Zoom, you can let any colleagues know that they can also stream this on Facebook. We're going to give a few more minutes, I think. And while we do that, I am just going to our action plan. So Youth Capital has been around for about 3 years, and we're really looking at bringing together research, lived experience on the lived experience of young people, and also to look at the stakeholders in the sector and bringing together all of that around a common agenda for tackling this huge beast that is youth unemployment in the country. And we really believe that this action plan is an action plan for the sector. It's not Youth Capital's plan, it's an agenda for change. It covers the entire journey of a young person from education through to employment. And obviously, the Second Chance program fits within our focus area of education, and very particularly around our second point, which is our first point, sorry, which is certify us. And we've put that as number one because we believe that certification is important for young people to signal their skills to employers, to unlock future opportunities for learning and earning. And we know that young people face many barriers in achieving these certificates, and achieving your matric is one of those really important certificates that young people need, and we'll unpack that a little today. But that was really our interest in the Second Chance program. And we know that the Second Chance program was started by the DB as a pilot in 2016, and it is a government-run program, and it was really started to help young people who had maybe failed on the first attempt or not gotten the marks they wanted, to give them a second opportunity to access this what could be a life-changing certificate. Really, we all know how important matric is, or at least how the labor market matric is this really important piece of paper, and for some young people, they might not pass on their first attempt. And so the Second Chance program was designed to give young people that second chance. But very little has been said about it since then, and we're really going to highlight some of that here today. We won't have a section for questions and answers, but specifically, but please post any questions you have in the Q&A box, which you should be able to see on your screens. I have a team in the background, so if there's any technical issues that you're having, you can pop that in the chat feature. But if you have specific questions for of the panelists, or just you can pop that in the Q&A section. And we will get to it throughout the discussion. We also will be sharing the link for the report, so it's now live. And yeah, the link for that will be in the chat box. You can click it there to download the report and read it in detail later. And we really hope that you'll continue to engage with us on this report going forward. So we're excited to have three speakers with us today. We've got, as I said, we've got Martin Gustafsson, who did the research for us, and I know that the Matrics on the Fringe is something he's very passionate about, and I'm sure you'll hear about that later. Then we've got Sandiswa Gwele, and she runs Ukhanyo Foundation, and she's really on the ground working with young people to help them access, to register, and to get support and tutoring for preparing for these second chance matric programs. And a lot of the work that we've done and a lot of the insights that we've gained and understanding of why this is such a problem for young people and through conversations with Sandiswa. So we really thank her for her time and contributions thus far to this conversation and the work we've been doing on this. And then we've got Simone Peinke from JobStarter. And she'll be looking at and telling us why matric certificates matter to the labor market through her work at JobStarter. And more detailed bios on each of the speakers is also available for you to read in the chat. So why does the Second Chance Program matter to young people? We've spoken to some young people, and you'll see some of those quotes in the report. But we've just selected two here that we wanted to share with you. Having a matric certificate really helped me get a job at the mine. The certificate is required when applying for jobs. We know this to be the case, and I'm sure Simone will tell us lots more about that later. And then also just a lack of awareness around the opportunity even existing. I think a lot of young people don't even know that they have this opportunity. And this quote captures that. You have to plant the seed of a second chance in the heads of learners well in advance. So in those critical days after the news has been broken to them, they are aware that there are alternatives and know who and what to consult instead of leaving them feeling alone, disappointed, and completely lost. We can imagine that finding out that you maybe failed your matric or didn't get the marks you needed to access university or TVET or opportunity can be a real devastating blow for young people. And so just an awareness that this program exists and they have alternatives can be a real life-changing moment for a young person. So as I said, we are streaming on Facebook and we're on the social media pages, and I'll put this slide up again later. But now, without any further conversation from me, I'm going to hand over to Martin. Hi, Martin.
Unmute.
Unmute.
Hi, Kristal.
Hi there, and welcome.
Good morning, everyone who's here. Thanks for this opportunity. Kristal, you've given me 10 minutes. I'm going to go through, I think, what I would like to highlight from this very interesting work. So I'm going to share my screen, right? I imagine I can do that, yes?
Yes, you should have a green button that says share screen.
Yes, I do. Okay. Right. So, yeah, there we go. So this this is then work that was completed at the end of last year by myself. I'm from RESEP at Stellenbosch, and I had some assistance from Lungas Wilindayo, a PhD student, also linked to RESEP and the Department of Economics. So yeah, I just have a couple of slides. I think it might, I mean, I believe that there are researchers in the house. So perhaps just some points on how we as researchers or maybe journalists approach these types of huge and important challenges that we have. So first bullet there is, I think it's worth emphasizing what it means to have, poverty-focused democratically kind of aligned research. It means very often looking at people who are not often on the radar. I mean, the radar is often populated by what gets into the media, what government announces. And in the case of Matric, a lot of people are out off the radar. So it applies here, it applies in other research as well. And household data is the ideal way of getting to the entire population. One should also, I think, be very careful about institutional statistics. They're important, you have to look at them. But if you rely only on, say, what government is publishing, you may misunderstand certain things. Sometimes there's double counting, and there, yeah, as you know, in the case of the Matric, what is not, there's a lot that's not reported, and that's part of the emphasis of this report. Obviously, we want to attach numbers to phenomena. We need to accept that statistics and data are often problematic in developing countries. It's not unnatural. It's the natural thing for us to have quality problems, and one has to then deal with that. One way one deals with that is to look behind the statistics you'll see in a stats essay or a Department of Basic Education report. Increasingly, microdata is becoming available, and I think as research, we need more researchers who have the skills to look at microdata. So, I mean, that's certainly a skills area that's worth investing in. One needs to do a lot of triangulation, especially in a developing country context, where, you know, what is published by one government department may not tally with what Stats SA is saying, and there are reasons for this, and one needs to understand that. And finally, you know, when it comes to policy, there are lots of inconsistencies and gaps. One of the issues we had to deal with in this report was, how do you define the Second Chance Programme? It's defined a little bit differently depending on where you look. So what we need to do is to, in a sense, you know, adopt a working definition and say, well, for this work, we are going to use this definition of second chance. And we make it clear in the report what definition we use. So this is the detailed version of the diagram that's kind of at the center of the report. And Youth Capital has a simplified version. So both of those are available. What's, I think, useful is to, yeah, this is quite busy, but let me just highlight some things. So what we're trying to map here is, where do youths move through the system, the education system, into employment, into unemployment? How is this broken down by gender? We have movements towards the matric exams. We have some dropping out here. These are the lines representing people who drop out of the system. We then have this circular movement here, and this is really the second chance terrain. So this is where people are making several attempts at getting the matric, which is a good thing. It means youths have something to kind of aim for. Not everyone will succeed, but those who succeed will have that additional kind of opportunity in the labor market and in post-school institutions. And then right at the top right end, we have, you know, who gets green is post-school qualifications. And we know that we have a very imbalanced system, in the sense that all of these numbers and thicknesses are not unusual for a developing country. I mean, there's a lot of talk around, you know, the big problem of dropping out before grade 12, you know, considered a national crisis. However, a point I often argue is that, you know, having over 50% of youths completing 12 years of schooling in South Africa is not unusual by developing country contexts. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. So this type of setup we see here is not unusual. This is highly unusual. It's very unusual for a middle-income country like South Africa to have so proportionally so few youths moving through post-school institutions. So this is really where the big challenge lies. The dropping out issue is a different kind of challenge, and I'll get to that in a moment. I've put 2 stars here where I think we need to think very carefully. One is, relates to these dropouts. Part of the problem is that if you leave education before 12 years successfully, you have no national qualification. So in that regard, I think it's quite important that government has committed to a grade 9 certificate. It's regarded as controversial. I don't think it should be controversial. I think it is an important addition we do need in the system, because we are not going to get everyone to complete 12 years in the next 10 years. So we need to have opportunities for those who don't make it that far, and that means having certification. The other little star here points to a channel, a flow, which is thinner than it should be. There are too few people going into TVET colleges without matrics. Most youths who enter TVET colleges already have a matric. But in terms of the national curriculum framework, these things are on the same level. So we are using public resources to give essentially part of the population the same level of education twice, and then there are others who don't complete it at all. So this is an equity issue as well. There should be far more people moving in from grades 9, 10, 11 straight into TVET colleges, and that would be facilitated by the grade 9 certificate. Right, I've almost used up my time, 2 minutes. What are some of the recommendations that we come up with? The dropping out problem, perhaps one needs to reframe that as a non-certification problem. The fundamental problem is youths who have no certificate, no national certificate to communicate their skills. I mean, if you've been in a schooling system for 10 years, even if you're not a very successful learner, you have skills, and one needs some kind of documentary evidence of that. And currently just under half of youths have no national certificate of any kind. They have a school report card, but that doesn't have the same weight amongst employers as a national certificate. I say we need more transparency with respect to second chance results. There's very little in terms of published statistics. It's very difficult to monitor the situation. It needs to be on the radar. What is on the radar is matrics who get the matric after the first sitting in the examinations. That's everything that you see in the media is about that. But there's a lot that's beyond that. And that is often an area where vulnerable youths are, and that's what we need to know about. Online operations, government is the responsibility of government, but I think now, and especially with the pandemic, it's become so clear how important these government services are. And I think a shift amongst researchers and NGOs is to focus more on the quality of this, because these systems around the world are easily designed. They don't serve the purpose they should serve. There needs to be feedback, accountability around the quality of the system, not just having a system, but how does it serve its purpose. And then I think that there's scope for those to information that will help. For example, difficult if you are collecting credit for no, do not have credits for matric now. It's quite they're not anywhere where you can find information on all of the mark thresholds required by university for particular subjects. Like engineering has different thresholds for different universities. youth have to go to the site of every single university. It'd be useful to have that kind of information in one place. And then lastly, SAQA, South African system whereby you punch in my number and I would see what were my actual matric results. That no longer operates as in the past. So now I think we need better systems for and do a quick check the authenticity of somebody's matric, the value. Thank you very much.
Martin, I'm sure there'll be questions coming through. Just to say there was one question from one of the audience members around all this being made available. So to just reiterate, I did type the answer there, but in case others have the same question, as Martin said, we did a simplified version of his very detailed graphic in the report, and the link is in the chat, and we'll share that again, I think, at the end of the event. And then also Martin's full report with all the technical detail and that full diagram will also be loaded onto our website later today, and we will share that link with all of you viewing today, in case you're interested in the more technical side of things. As Martin says, that graphic is extremely detailed, and if you're interested in that detail, we will share that with you. So I'd now like to invite all of the panelists to please turn on their videos, so that we could have a little bit of a response to some of the findings that Martin presented. And Sandiswa, I'm gonna come to you first. So in Youth Capital's work with young people, we know that a lot of what Martin is saying from his research is really what young people are finding on the ground, the struggles around trying to find information, trying to understand the process, trying to find support to complete, to train, trying to find support to complete the second chance successfully without the support of being in a school is something that young people really struggle with. And so do you find that some of what the report says is what you see with the young people that you work with in Khayelitsha?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity, Kristal. I read the report, the full report, and now I was listening to Martin. I find the report very useful in terms of the way forward and in terms of the evidence that the report is suggesting. And but because of the time constraints, I will focus on a few things that I would really like to emphasize on the report or to comment on. And my comments will be based on the National Senior Certificate because I'm working with young people matric who are 21 years old or younger. So this will be based on them. The report spoke about geographical matters. That young people from urban areas are likely to succeed and to achieve the matric certificate, the post-matric certificate. And I deal with the second chances that are coming from rural areas and disadvantaged areas. And these are the young people that are facing so many challenges that are suggested by the report. And one of the challenges that I would like to comment on that is also on the report is the cost. When the young person is going through the process of rewriting or taking the second chance. These young people need financial support. And the financial support that they need does not only looks at registration fees. They need money to go to the department to register. They need money to attend tutoring classes. They need money to print material. They need money to go to the internet cafes to to access information. They need money for data. They need money for learning material. And this is the biggest challenge that hinders the young people who are trying to take the second chance. Remember this journey, they are disappointed, they lost their confidence, they have no support from schools. Some of them, if not all of them, do not have support from their families because they have disappointed their families. They walk on their own. So the one thing that I also would like to add or to comment on is that the second chances do not only need academic support. They need emotional and psychological support. They need to regain their confidence that they lost. They need someone who will walk the journey with them, who will tell them that you are still smart, don't change your dream, you can still be successful in life, you can obtain your matric. They need someone that will navigate the options that are there with them. It's a lonely journey. So I can't agree enough on this report, and to add that we as individuals, as communities, as the society as a whole, as organizations, we have a responsibility to give these young people assurance, to give these young people, to provide them with information, and to support them in everything that they do, because it's a very, very difficult journey to walk on your own. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandiswa. I think you raised such an important point, which possibly we underestimate a little bit in the report, is the psychosocial support that young people need. I think this is often underestimated when we have conversations around young people and the support that we need. We focus a lot on education and getting them into jobs or work opportunities, but we don't look at the mental health and well-being of young people and the struggles that they face. And I think it's so important that you raised that point there. And something else that I think you mentioned up front, which actually I hadn't covered in the introduction, and I think is worth to go back to, the difference between an NSC and an SC. And personally, I didn't even know that there was an SC before we wrote this report. So it's been a learning journey for me personally to understand the difference between a national senior certificate and a senior certificate. And I'm glad that you raised the point that you're speaking specifically around the national senior certificate. And for those joining us today who perhaps don't know the difference, I'll give you a quick little summary, but the details are in the report. So the national senior certificate, or when we talk about people doing a rewrite opportunity, people who have just failed, people who want to improve their marks, that's the certificate that they would be writing. But when you talk about a senior certificate opportunity, that's available to young people who have been out of school for more than 3 years, who are older than 21 years of age, or sometime after grade 9, but before actually reaching matric. And the requirements to write those exams are slightly different. And so I know in our field work as a team at Youth Capital, to understand the registration dates and the requirements, there was a lot of confusion. And actually, when we got down to the basics of it, the confusion really stemmed from people thinking that an NSC and an SC were the same thing. And I think that leads to a lot of confusion, and people don't even know that they are two different things and that they mean different things. So I'm glad that you highlighted that, Sandiswa. Maybe just one point from you before I move over to Simone. You spoke about the role anybody can play. I think a lot of what we've said on is the ways government could improve this program, is it is a government-run program, but that doesn't mean there isn't a role to play for NGOs like yourself. And I know in the audience today there are quite a few other NGOs doing similar work in different areas, a role for them to play to support young people, to help them navigate this emotionally difficult time. But then maybe on the more practical side, in your experience, where do young people go for study material? what does your organization do to kind of help them, and what have you found has been quite helpful in supporting them with learning material and preparing for the exams?
Thank you. I'm going to first talk about material. It is so difficult to get learning material for the second chance because of many reasons. Because they don't have data access to online and download and have all the access to information. So what our organization does is that we support academically, we print the papers, we download the study guides that they need, we organize tutoring for them, tutoring classes, and we even go and beyond and having to provide them with data so that they can have access to information, because data is the reality that even if you do not have data, you cannot be on WhatsApp. That means you will miss out on communication or information that you're supposed to be receiving via WhatsApp. So for organizations out there, access is the big challenge. Access to information is a big challenge. And also, Kristal, talking about access and resources, now we're dealing with registration process to even rewrite now. It's not an easy process. There was an online version, the way you can register online, but you register online. How do you register online? That means you register online, you must scan your documents and upload them. Do they all access to a scanner, to a printer to do that? No. If not, you can't do it online, you can't scan. Do you have money to take a text to the Department of Education and register there? So resources and access is a big challenge. And also, yeah, it's a big challenge, the resources. And our organization, even, that's why I spoke about the emotional support, self-development, work with these young people so that they can regain their confidence and believe in themselves, because that's the biggest challenge, is that they lost confidence in themselves. They don't believe in themselves. So that is why it is important to have someone that's walking that journey with you, that that can give that assurance that you are so good, you smart, you can be successful in life, and don't change your dream.
Thanks so much, Sandiswa. Simone, on that point, I think the value of, one of both for young people and for employers is huge area, and a huge way young people find themselves, that they have this piece of proves to the world and to themselves really that they have these skills. And so I was from your experience working, and maybe you can with just a little sentence or two on what JobStarter does for the audience who aren't aware. Just kind of unpack for us why these certificates are so important and how they are valued in the labor market.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kristal. Hi, everyone. So at JobStarter, we are an online platform that hopes to support young people in their journey towards either employment or education opportunities. And we do this by providing work readiness, learning modules, assessments, so to be able to flag to employers competencies that you've achieved in various modules related to different work readiness topics. Support in creating CVs, and then we also support young people and employers in coming together and finding each other in an efficient way. So that's kind of JobStarter in a nutshell. But I think on the point of matric certificates, what we see with employers is it's absolutely held in very high regard, and for a lot of entry-level positions where perhaps one would assume a matric certificate wouldn't be required, they are, and increasingly so. And for a lot of employers, it's a type of guarantee of a minimum set of skills and competencies that a young person will have coming into the workplace. And so interestingly, we see just beyond the matric certificate, some employers will have a preference for particular subjects, and obviously, levels of achievement within those subjects are important. And we don't see that same value being placed on matric equivalent qualifications. And so again, there's this thing of, it's become so important for young people to take that particular path for them to have access to a larger number of opportunities. Recently, interestingly, matric certificates are also being used as a way to filter candidates for jobs that don't actually have a matric as a minimum criteria. So especially now in these kind of economically constrained times where you have a vast number of applicants applying for one position, an easy way to kind of filter through the first batch of candidates is to just look at and so the implication there is if you don't have a matric certificate, even if you have the skills and competencies and experience that would be valuable to the role and to the organization, you're not just limited in the number of jobs you can apply for, but you're also possibly not even getting the opportunity to be considered for positions. And so, we see it as something that increasingly so, as jobs become more scarce, as opportunities become more scarce for young people, it's becoming an increasingly important thing that employers are looking for and stipulating as a requirement for entry-level positions that they're advertising.
Thanks for that, Simone. I think you raise a good point. There was a question in the chat, in the Q&A, that Martin has touched on that I think relates nicely to your point. Somebody had asked, if this is the only option, what are matric equivalencies that young people can access? And Martin raises the point there, very similar to what you've said, is that unfortunately in South Africa, while on paper there are other options through the TVET, so technical and vocational training institutes, they in reality, they aren't valued by the labor market or even society at large. We hear again and again how young people, their parents, their communities believe that TVETs are for those who aren't smart enough to get into university. TVETs are for the dumb ones. Like this kind of rhetoric, which isn't really true, keeps perpetuating. And Martin, I think you might want to jump in there, so go for it.
I'm happy when you said this is often not true, because I think I think it's important for us and for Youth Capital to underline this point that there's a bit of a kind of an urban legend that these qualifications don't carry much value, but the little kind of economic research that has happened around the value of TVET qualifications in the labor market points to them being clearly more valuable than the matric. So, but I think part of the issue is that culturally I've been asked to start my video. Culturally, we're very university degree oriented. So there may be parent pressures to get a university degree, and there may be a perception that if you end up getting a TVET qualification, that's some kind of failure relative to the expectation. But actually, returns in the labor market are not that bad for these TVET qualifications. Thanks.
Thanks. And Simone, maybe you want to speak about it from your experience with working with young people. In reality, people coming from a TVET actually have more practical experience than those who have come through a traditional schooling system. And maybe you could speak to your experience about how employers actually, once they've gone that route, value that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just before commenting on that, to add that for a lot of young people not getting a university degree or going the TVET route, their chances of success going that route are much higher than going to university. And so, again, it's not necessarily just a reflection of one's kind of intellectual ability as to whether university or TVET is the best option for you. And absolutely, I think what we at JobStarter are constantly trying to advocate for is that, particularly a matric qualification, it's not necessarily indicative of the types of skills or competencies that you need, and there are other ways to potentially look for those competencies, to test for them, and there's certainly other qualifications that may be more appropriate looking to when recruiting young people. But I do think, again, it's, with what you were commenting on earlier, the idea that a matric certificate is so important. I mean, nationally, it's such a huge event, and we do turn it into this massive thing, and we don't do that for other colleges. Similarly, university graduations, they kind of carry a different gravitas compared to other types of graduations at different types of institutions. And so I think it is a challenge for us as well to shift our perceptions and appreciation of what people have gone through when they follow other pathways that don't happen to be a kind of tertiary or university route. Yeah, but I think for us as well, I mean, there's so many, you know, we had a young, just speaking to our experiences with young people that we worked with, one young woman who failed matric, and it was because she was, you know, doing subjects that she was kind of pressured into doing. Her family wanted her to be a doctor, and so she had chosen science as subjects, which she really struggled with, failed, then went through this really difficult journey of having to rewrite, which kind of took, you know, a period of time for her to do. Did that, achieved really well, went on and is now doing a BCom and excelling in that because commerce is actually what she's interested in. And so again, you know, it's just challenging this notion that someone who's even gone through a second chance program and hasn't done matric the first time is because they kind of don't, you know, that it's a capability that they don't have. I think we just need to challenge that and realize that there's so many other barriers, and we're potentially kind of wasting a lot of potential by being so fixated on this one type of qualification.
Absolutely. And Martin, do you want to jump in there?
Yes, just on the issue of subjects, I think there's mention of this in the report, but I think it's worth repeating this, that subject breakdowns are very unequal in the matric, and very, little has changed in the last 20 years. I mean, in many countries, kind of the most advantaged tend to take more academic subjects, the less advantaged tend to take more kind of vocational subjects. In South Africa, it's the other way around. 50% of white matriculants are taking some technical subject, computer applications, technology, engineering, graphics, and design. Amongst Black African South Africans, the percentage is around 6%. So there's this incredible kind of, there's a window of opportunity here. I mean, we clearly need to have more Black matriculants taking the technical subjects. And I'm not going to go into why that's not on the policy agenda and why it's not, well, it actually is on the policy agenda. If you look at the 5-year plan of government, it is there. But why we haven't got this right yet, I think is an interesting question.
I'm glad that you raised the issue of race there, Martin, because actually a question came in. It's like you were psychic and you knew. A question had actually come in, and it was directed at you, but you've answered it now, to say, are TVETs not more related to people of color? And I think you've kind of answered it, but, you know, from my own personal experience, you know, as a colored woman growing up, there was this result of apartheid that people of color couldn't access universities and were forced into training colleges. And so I think a lot of the stigma around TVETs being less than is that, you know, in a democratic South Africa, we should all be able to access universities, and we are able to access universities, and this perception that these training colleges are still only for people of color who are seen as less than in apartheid. I think there's a huge social stigma that persists around the, you know, the perception of that, regardless of what subjects are offered in, you know, quintile 1 schools versus quintile 5 schools, which is a different conversation, I think, Martin. But just that perception, just in terms of communities and parents, I know I experienced that, you know, firsthand. And I think that continues to perpetuate this idea. And I'm glad that you brought the stats in there, Martin. I don't know if you want to add, but I'm really glad you raised that. Actually, in reality, it's the other way around with what we're seeing. I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Well, I mean, just to emphasize that what I was talking about are subjects in schools. You know, part of the trick. There are a number of technical subjects within the trick. And the question is, how does one bring about more equitable access to provinces do better than others? Free done relatively well in get more Black students access it's computed as a metric. Not at all.
I think province challenges and can be quite challenging. I see the question in the Q&A. Can be my first. Checking somebody had success rate, and I try to be very this we cannot the success from currently have, and so one of the adverse policy pushes is going to individual track around people who access the second chance, so we can see how many are actually passing. And Martin, I don't know if you explain view, you know, just to elaborate some of why we can't say exactly what the pass rate is for this group of learners.
We can roughly say what the pass rate is, but I mean, at the same time, one must acknowledge that there's a lot of mudslinging in this area around pass rate. It gets discussed in very political. Very often, the numbers that are put forward are incorrect. So one needs to be very careful. For example, you can't take grade 1s and compare, you know, 12 years ago and compare. There are many reasons why that's not a valid comparison. But yeah, so we have rough pass rates and rough success rates. And as I put up in the Q&A, about 10 of these second chancers are getting the certificate every year. Now, you know, I can see that being translated into a newspaper headline, you know, pass rate is only 10% for second chances. You know, people get quite emotional about them. I think this is one of the reasons why government is not revealing more information about second chance, because they think it's going to hit back at government. Now, I don't think that's a good justification at all. The numbers need to go out, but one just needs to explain why. You know, you're not going to get 100% pass. Most of those youths are not planning to do this in 1 year anyway. You know, they're planning to do this in maybe 3 years. So you're never going to get 100%. Currently, we have about 10% getting it. Maybe that should rise to 20%. So that would be a realistic goal.
Thanks so much. I want to come back to you, and you raised some of this in the earlier point you made. Some of the findings on the report, you know, that women are more likely to succeed, youth in urban settings are more likely to succeed. What are some of the solutions that you think, from your experience, that could work to, you know, to get rid of some of these disparities? Or what are the things that are making the youth in urban areas more successful, or females more successful in your experience?
Okay. I will first talk about the importance of centralizing information, and also we need to provide the updated content for these young people. There's too much information, and we don't know if the information that is out there is updated or not. And also the registration process, if the government can really work on the registration process and make a registration process easy for these young people to access, that would be wonderful. And you also mentioned about why do I think that the learners from urban areas are succeeding and the ones are not. The answer is simple, it's because it's lack of resources that are making these young people from the rural and disadvantaged areas not succeed. It's lack of resources. It's the environment, the household environment, the experiences that they go through on a daily basis, the traumas, the past traumas that they are carrying with them, the violence that is happening in their spaces, in their homes, in their communities. And that is why our focus as Ukhanyo Foundation, we focus on giving academic support. We have three focus areas. It's academic support, development, working on building resilient young people who have the desire and the drive to succeed in life, irrespective of their circumstances. And the third leg of Ukhanyo is career pathways. Navigate these options with them. What options do we have out there? What else can you do? And also, I think, I don't know if it was Martin or Simone that mentioned that we need to start appreciating the different career pathways that these young people or people are taking. There's this thing of, we all think that university or passing matric and going to university is the only way to go. There are many other ways. There's entrepreneurship. There are so many things. These young people who did not make it or didn't pass matric does not mean that they are not smart enough. They are very smart. They can do great things. They can be successful business young people that can create jobs for themselves and other people in their communities. So we need to start appreciating and acknowledging the effort that they are putting and walking the journey with them.
Absolutely, Sandiswa. And Simone, to bring in something that Sandiswa said about, having the resources. So Martin highlighted it in his presentation as well, just this lack of information, lack of access to resources. I know that you can definitely speak to how online tools can kind of help to navigate the difficulties there. So maybe you could just speak to us around how you think online tools can be used for this, and maybe what are the barriers that we need to break down for young people to be able to access online tools a little bit better than is currently the case.
Thanks, Kristal. Yeah, I mean, I think as Martin alluded to earlier, it's not just about having the information out there. I think there's this idea of if it exists on a website somewhere, that's kind of tick we're done, people should know about it. Especially with young people having to navigate these very complicated pathways, we need to make sure that that information not only exists, but exists in a way that's digestible, that makes sense, and that importantly, that reaches them at the right time in their journey. So we need to be very proactive about how we're reaching out to young people and when, and realize that a young person, especially going through a second chance program and having to take that path is not, as I think Sandiswa mentioned, it's a very psychologically difficult thing to go through. Often they do feel on their own. And so we also need to send information and communication and engagements with their family and their community members more broadly to understand what really goes into this process and what this pathway means. But I think also in terms of young people's access to online communication, there's so much conflicting information out there, and young people, especially now, there's a lot of scams, especially with programs that may be able to support them. And so we need to think of ways of providing verified online that is speaking the same message that young people can trust, and that comes to them through channels that they know and trust. I think we need to remember that young people going through these transitions, that they're doing it when they're going through the already very kind of turbulent transition from adolescence into adulthood. And so it is a time of huge stress, and it's a time of if people aren't being adequately supported during that phase in their lives, they can be very vulnerable to becoming discouraged, and to remaining locked outside of opportunities. And so, we really need to young people's will, their optimism, their resilience to pursue these opportunities, because it can be easily dashed, especially if they're not getting access to the right kinds of information. It can be as simple as missing information on an application deadline, which then means that you're spending an additional year now waiting for that opportunity, availability of that opportunity again. And we know that the longer young people are outside of opportunities, the longer that they are not in education, employment, or training, the less likely they are to secure opportunities in the future. They are also at increased risk of mental health issues and of being stuck in this state of poverty. And so it's not just about putting the information up, it's about making sure that young people are actually engaging with it, and that the people that are kind of in their lives, their families, caregivers, their community, teachers, also have access to that information and can share it with them.
Thanks, Simone. And to that point, you can, on Youth Capital's website, under our blog section, you can read about our experience of trying to figure out the registration dates for years NSC and SC and what we went through as a team. And also following the launch of this report, we will be putting out, a standalone little section that explains the difference between the NSC, the SC, and the NASCA, which is a proposed qualification that has not been rolled out yet, but we wanted to have it on the radar for people to be aware of, and just a little explainer so that, as you say, parents, teachers, other people working in the space supporting young people can know the difference between these various things and make sure that they follow the correct registration procedures, because as you say, following the incorrect ones can lead to a year-long delay possibly for some young people. Martin, I wanted to come back to you on just the technical side of the research a little bit. So, in the report, we have a sentence where we made informed choices with the information we had to, what basically. And I think it'd be nice for you from the technical side to say, how confident are we in these numbers? How generalizable are they? Do you think COVID will shift these numbers down? Maybe just on the technical side, if you wanted to unpack that a little, I'm sure people in the audience are having thoughts.
Okay, well, to the last question, yes, COVID will change, but to hazard, to what degree? We're still monitoring that. It's probably not going to be the absolute disaster that some people made it out to be. It's certainly going to be felt. It's not going to be resolved in a few years. 20 years from now, youths who experienced COVID-19 when they were at school are still going to be feeling the after effects. There's research that supports, the fact that, schooling is disrupted. Many years later, even earnings are affected, to now on of data. The report I think is fairly open about where we are more certain and where we are less certain, and when we're certain, why are we not certain. I've already mentioned that the problem is just that basic statistics are not. For example, how many get a certificate every year? That's not something that's part of any official kind of reporting process, and that's problematic. But kind of, I think a lot of money and effort has gone over the years into building individual student record databases, both in the basic education sector and in the post-school education sector. And what we should do more of is linking those data sets so that we know with more certainty what exactly are the flows from the schooling system in TVET colleges, for instance, between TVET colleges and universities, schools and universities. There are sorts of very complex flows there. And this data actually gives us enormous opportunities to switch and to see how many people, as Sandiswa mentioned, I mean, there are many objects that disadvantaged youth based on the magnitudes of obstacles. I mean, to what extent is repetition and worse for poor South Africans? We know it's worse, much worse. How much time is wasted? For example, is completing your university degree, which seems to be like the reality, 40% of universities not completing is that a, or does it have some benefits in the lab? Because you have, after all, it's to something that to university. So all these things, I think, could require close analysis.
Thanks, Martin. I think make us count as our actions in the action plan, and this is exactly around this tracking. And I see that Robin, somebody in the audience has commented that there's a larger project underway called PSET Cloud. And Robin, Youth Capital will definitely be reaching out to you to find out more about that project, because that sounds something that's completely up our alley. In terms of just thinking through some of the solutions, and we've spoken about them, quite a bit, access to online material, just making sure the information is out there, communicating with young people. There's a few minutes for final kind of closing comments and remarks. So Sandiswa, maybe over to you. Is there, any solutions that you would like to put forward, or you think should be taken up, or maybe something that we didn't mention in the report that you think is important as we try to think about how to support young people and help this program function more efficiently, to give young people the second chance opportunity? It seems Sandiswa's internet died. Load shedding always hits us when we have these launches. I don't know why. The universe is against us. With our launch for our big report last year, there was also load shedding that caused havoc. So Simone, I'm going to direct that same question to you. Anything that from your experience was maybe not highlighted in the report, or anything that you think the solutions that you'd like to unpack a little bit more that we maybe have missed in the conversation today?
Yeah, I think perhaps just to emphasize what Sandiswa already mentioned about the psychological support that's required. So we see, and we have seen even with some second chance programs that are offered in particular facilities, that young people feel quite embarrassed to actually go and seek out the support, because in their community there is this kind of stigma attached to having failed a matric. Also, I mean, what was mentioned earlier about partially completing qualifications, what we find at JobStarter is that most young people underreport what they've done, because there's this perception that a partially completed anything is going to be looked upon badly by employers, which kind of brings me to this last point on, even when the second chance programs are working well, from an employer's perspective, there needs to be appreciation of what that means and what a young person has gone through to achieve that certificate. And it cannot be seen as a negative thing that someone hasn't passed their matric the first time. We need to appreciate the various barriers that young people have had to go through to get to that point where they're actually able to write it. We have to appreciate the amount of resilience that it shows for a young person to after having failed something as a matric, to actually want to go back, apply themselves and get through it again, and the capacity for development and growth and learning, and those things are incredibly valuable to any organization. And so I think that those are kind of really important things from an employer's perspective, in terms of what everyone can do. We do just need to try and shift our thinking and really appreciate what it means for a young, when reviewing candidates who've come through these programs as well.
Thanks, Simone. Sandiswa, I'm glad that you could join us again. Repeat my question in case you missed it. So, just in closing, anything from your experience that about today, or maybe wasn't touched on in the report, particularly around solutions that you think would really help us to make sure that this program worked more efficiently to help young people access and successfully complete these second chance opportunities?
I would really like to call on government to support student life and by accessing that decent job, because the purpose of supporting them to have matric is that they can at least have a decent job and break the cycle of poverty in their families. So we need support from government, from other NGOs. And one more thing that I would like to say is collaboration and working together as community-based organizations and non-profit organizations based in the community and based in the cities. Let's share resources and help these young people. Thank you.
Absolutely, Sandiswa. Martin, any closing remarks from you?
Just thank you very much. I think this has been a very interesting session and launch, and yeah, lots of work to do, and government needs to do things, researchers need to do things, NGOs, youth capital. There's a lot of work. We all have, there's a lot on our plate, and we need to do it. Thanks.
Just on that point, next steps. So I love that Sandiswa spoke about collaboration, and so I'm just putting up this slide again just for a few moments to say this is going to be a focus area of youth capital for the foreseeable future. It definitely is one of our focus areas for 2021 at least. And so let's work together. As Martin says, and this is really youth capital's role, is bringing together research, young people, civil society, government, the private sector around a common and shared agenda to help young people access that first decent job, achieve a sustainable livelihood, and having a certificate to prove their skills and signal their skills is still a huge way in which we can unlock opportunities. And so we really want to work together on this issue. So please do get in touch with us. I see on the chat there's been lots of sharing of the work that you're doing. Please do share that with us. We will be capturing what was said on the chat, but get in touch. We would love to hear your stories of your experience, to hear from your young people around their experience with Second Chance, good or bad. I think that at Youth Capital, we really believe in driving solutions based on what young people put forward. And they often have really this to ask them. So, you know, those of you doing the work can really help us access those stories, and we'd love to hear from you. And then, as Martin said, for researchers in the room, I think there are lots of things that we would love further research on. So, you know, if this is an area of interest, get in touch with Martin, get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you as well. And to say that everybody on the call today, you will be receiving emails from us. If you would like to remain informed about the work that we're doing, there's obviously lots of policy work that we'll be doing going forward in this area. I think the main things, the first things which we think of as low-hanging fruit, is to just find ways to get the information out there in very easy to understand format. So just a rejigging of the website, the DBE website, and then, you know, a more longer term plan about just reporting on these second chance programs and the SC, which, as Martin said, has been unreported on. So these are the things we'll be focusing on at a policy level. And if you'd like to stay informed with that, you can let us know via the contact we'll be making with you in the coming weeks. So I just want to thank everybody again for their time and for joining us today, and most importantly to my panelists. I think you guys, your insights and your different views from the work that you're doing have really added a richness to this conversation. And to everybody, please share the link, get the report out there. The more people who know about this, the better. Thanks so much for your time, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.